grab a notebook, test your knowledge, and let's see how many questions you can get right. Let's get started. 1. Which nephron structure is primarily responsible for establishing the osmotic gradients of the renal medulla? A. Proximal convoluted tubule, B. Distal convoluted tubule, and C. Loop of Henle, D. Collecting duct. So to answer this question, let's think about how the kidney concentrates urine. So we start with the fact that concentrated urine requires a strong osmotic gradient in renal medulla. The next question is, which structure creates that gradient? The key mechanism here is the countercurrent multiplier system. So this mechanism occurs in the loop of Henle, especially through the different permeability properties of its ascending and descending limbs. The descending limb allows water to leave, while the ascending limb actively transports sodium and chloride. Together, these processes establish the medullary osmotic gradient. Therefore, the correct answer is the loop of Henle. Yes, got it. And option C, loop of Henle. So, number 2. A patient has elevated TSH and decreased T3 over T4 levels. Which condition is most likely present? A. Hyperthyroidism, B. Primary hypothyroidism, C. Pituitary adenoma secreting T3, or D. Thyroid hormone resistance. So let's break this down step by step. The pituitary gland produces TSH, yes, or thyroid stimulating hormone. I will write for you. TSH means thyroid stimulating hormone. So normally TSH tells the thyroid glands to produce T3 and T4. In this patient, TSH is elevated, which means the pituitary is working harder than normal. However, T3 and T4 levels remain low. So this tells us the thyroid gland is not responding properly. In other words, the problem is in the thyroid itself, not in the pituitary gland. So, thyroid failure. Clinically, this pattern is classic for primary hypothyroidism. Therefore, the correct answer is primary hypothyroidism, number B. Okay? So, number 3. If two heterozygous parents have a child, what is the probability the child will express a recessive trait? So A, 25%, B, 50%, C, 75%, and D, 100%. So for this question, we need basic Mendelian genetic. Both parents are heterozygous, meaning each carries one dominant allele and one recessive allele. Yes? Using a Punnett square, we can calculate the possible outcome. It's easy for you. 25% of offspring will be AA and double big A, and 50% big A and a small a, and double small a, 25%. Since recessive traits are only expressed when individual inherits two recessive alleles, only the AA double small a genotype will show the trait. Therefore, the probability is 25%. Option A is true or correct answer. So, Number 4. Which factor directly increases cardiac output? A. Increase afterload. B. Decrease heart rate. C. Increase stroke volume. D. Increased peripheral resistance. So, let's start with the formula for cardiac output. Cardiac output equals heart rate multiply a stroke volume. Yes, a stroke volume. What is the stroke volume? The stroke volume is amount of blood amount of blood pumped out with each heartbeat. So, if a stroke volume increases, yes, more blood leaves the heart during every contraction. As a result, total cardiac output increases. Yes, this is a direct relationship. Cardiac output increase, SV increase. Therefore, increasing a stroke volume directly increase cardiac output. So, option C. Number 5. A patient has a blood pH or pH of 7.30 and elevated PaCO2. What disorder is present? A. Metabolic acidosis. B. Metabolic alkalosis. C. Respiratory acidosis. And D. Respiratory alkalosis. So, to solve this question, we first look at the pH. A pH of 730, yes, 730, so is below the normal range, which means the patient is experiencing the acidosis. Yes, the pH normal is 7.35 till 7.45. The normal pH of blood. Yes. The next step is identifying the source. Carbon dioxide levels are elevated, so CO2 is increased. Excess carbon dioxide combines with water to form carbonic acid. This increases acidity in the blood. Since the abnormality originates from carbon dioxide retention, the respiratory system is responsible. Therefore, this patient has respiratory acidosis and option C. So, number 6. Which organelle is responsible for ATP or adenosine triphosphate production through oxidative phosphorylation? So, A. Ribosome. B. Lysosome. C. Golgi apparatus. Or D. Mitochondrion. So, every cell needs energy in the form of ATP. While glycolysis produces a small amount of ATP, the majority is generated through oxidative phosphorylation. So, this process takes place in the inner membrane of the mitochondria. The electron transport change creates a proton gradient which drives ATP synthesis. Because of this critical role, mitochondria are often called the powerhouse of the cell. Powerhouse of the cell. Yes? Therefore, the correct answer is the mitochondrion. So, number 7. Which cells are primarily responsible for antibody production? A. Macrophages, B. Plasma cells, C. Neutrophils, and D. Natural killer cells or NK cells. So, let's follow the immune response pathway. B lymphocytes are responsible for humoral immunity. When activated, B cells differentiate into plasma cells. Yes, plasma cells function as antibody-producing factories. They release large amounts of immunoglobulins into circulation. These antibodies help identify and neutralize pathogen. Neutralize pathogen. Therefore, plasma cells are primarily responsible for antibody production. Option B. It's easy question. 8. Most carbon dioxide in blood is transported as A. Dissolved CO2, B. Carbamine, hemoglobin, C. Bicarbonate ions, and D. Carbonic acid. So, many students assume carbon dioxide travels freely in the bloodstream, like cars. However, only a small percentage remains dissolved in plasma. Some carbon dioxide binds to hemoglobin, but the majority is converted into bicarbonate ions inside red blood cells. Excuse me. Yes. So the correct answer is bicarbonate ions. Is C. So most, even the question said most carbon dioxide in blood transport is bicarbonate ions. Question 9. Which ion influx is primarily responsible for depolarization of neuron? A. Potassium, C. Sodium, C. Calcium, and D. Chloride. So, neurons communicate using action potential. At the rest, the inside of the neuron is negatively charged. When a stimulus reaches threshold, voltage gated sodium channels open. Yes, and a positive channels open. Sodium ions rush into the cell because of both electrical and concentration gradients. This rapid influx makes the inside of the neuron more positive. Yes, that process is called depolarization. Therefore, sodium is the ion primarily responsible for depolarization. So, the correct answer is B, sodium. Number 10. Which metabolic pathway produces the greatest amount of ATP or adenosine triphosphate? Yes? So, A. Glycolysis, B. Krebs cycle, C. Electron transport chain, and D. Fermentation. Cellular respiration occurs in several stages. Glycolysis generates only a small amount of ATP. Small amount ATP. Yes? The Krebs cycle produces a little more and generates electron carriers. However, the electron transport chain is where most ATP is produced. Electrons move through a series of protein complexes, creating a proton gradient. ATP synthesis then uses this gradient to generate large amounts of ATP. Yeah? Therefore, the electron transport chain produces the greatest amount of ATP. So, option C, electron transport chain. Yes? So, you can take a rest. 10 question. So, number 11. So, which clotting factor deficiency causes hemophilia A? A. Factor 8. B. Factor 9. C. Factor 10. And D. Factor 12. So, let's analyze this bleeding disorder step by step. Hemophilia is an inherited coagulation disorder that affects the clotting cascade. Yes. Hemophilia is there are several types, but hemophilia A is especially associated with factor 8. Yes, factor 8 deficiency. Factor 8 plays an important role in the intrinsic coagulation pathway. Yes. Without sufficient factor 8, clot formation becomes inefficient and bleeding lasts longer than normal. Therefore, hemophilia A is caused by deficiency of factor 8. Number A. So, question number 12. Which cranial nerve is responsible for most parasympathetic activity in the thoracic and abdominal cavities? A. Trigeminal nerve. B. Facial nerve. C. Vagus nerve. D. Hypoglossal nerve. So, to answer this question, think about the parasympathetic nervous system. Yes, parasympathetic nervous system. So this system is responsible for the rest and digest response. Yes, the major nerve carrying parasympathetic signals to the heart, yes, lungs, stomach, and intestines is cranial nerve 10. Yes. This nerve is called the vagus nerve. It slows heart rate, stimulates digestion, and regulates many autonomic functions. So, I will write for you. The slow heart rate, vagus nerve, yes, to stimulate digestion. 3. Regulates many autonomic functions. Yes. Yes. So, therefore, the correct answer is the vagus nerve. Option C. Number 13. Aldosterone primarily acts to A. Increase glucose production, B. Increase sodium reabsorption, C. Increase potassium reabsorption, D. Increase calcium absorption. So, aldosterone is one of the most important hormones involved in fluid balance. Yeah, it's released from the adrenal cortex when the renin angiotensin aldosterone system is activated. Yes, its primary target is the distal nephron. The aldosterone increases sodium reabsorption back to the bloodstream. Yes, and water flows sodium, which increases blood volume and blood pressure. Yes, blood pressure goes up. Yes, and at the same time potassium is excreted. Yes. Therefore, the main action of aldosterone is increase sodium reabsorption. Yes. So the sodium of blood goes up. So number 14. Which structure allows bacteria to exchange genetic material directly? A. Capsule. B. Pilus. C. Flagellum. D. Cell wall. So, bacteria can share genetic information through a process called conjugation. Yes? During conjugation, one bacterium transfers DNA directly to another. Yes? I will draw for you. Bacterium 1 its chromosome. Second bacterium. Yes. This process requires a specialized structure known as a pilus. So that's pilus for conjugation. The pilus forms a physical bridge between bacterial cells. Yes. Through this connection, plasmids and other genetic material can be transferred. Plasmid is a additionally chromosome. Some bacteria have the plasmid. Plasmid can be resistant against antibody. Yes. Antibiotic. Yes, is it true? Yes. So, the correct answer is pills. So, I'm tired. 15 question. So, number 15. Which bond is responsible for maintaining the secondary structure of proteins? A. Peptide bond. B. Ionic bond. C. Hydrogen bond. D. Covalent bond. Yes. Protein have multiple levels of structure. Yes. The primary structure of protein is simply the amino acid sequence. Yes. Like methionine and flan, etc. Secondary structure refers to alpha helix and beta sheet. These structures are stabilized by hydrogen bond. Yes, hydrogen bond. Yes, form between different parts of the protein backbone. Without these hydrogen bonds, the secondary structure would collapse. Yes. Therefore, hydrogen bonds maintain the secondary structure of protein. Yes. Option C. So, number 16. During which phase of meiosis do homologous chromosomes separate? Yes. Prophase 1 B. Metaphase 1 C. Anaphase 1 and D. Telophase 2. Yes. So, meiosis consists of two major divisions. During meiosis 1, homologous chromosome pairs are separated. The actual separation occurs during anaphase 1. At this stage, each chromosome's pair moves toward opposite poles of the cell. This process reduces the chromosomes number by half. Yes. Therefore, homologous chromosomes separate during anaphase 1, option C. Which hormone directly lower blood glucose levels? A. Glucagon, B. Cortisol, C. Epinephrine, and D. Insulin. So, blood glucose regulation depends on several hormones, yes. However, only one hormone directly lowers blood glucose levels. When blood sugar rises, yes, blood glucose goes up, beta cells in the pancreas release insulin. Yes, pancreas release insulin. Yes. Insulin promotes glucose uptake into cells and stimulates glycogen formation. Yes. As a result, blood glucose levels decrease. Therefore, insulin is the correct answer, number D. So, which hormone directly lower blood glucose levels? Insulin. So, question number 18. The hepatic portal vein carries blood from A. Heart to liver, B. Liver to kidney, C. Gastrointestinal tract to liver, D. Lungs to liver. So, after food is digested, nutrients enter the bloodstream through the intestines. Yes? So, digestive tract, nutrient absorb. Yes? 3 nutrients do not immediately enter general circulation. Instead, they first travel through the hepatic portal vein. Yes? This vessel carries nutrient-rich blood directly to the liver. The liver then processes, stores, and detoxifies substances before they reach the rest of the body. Yes? Therefore, the hepatic portal vein carries blood from the gastrointestinal tract to the liver. Number C, gastrointestinal tract to liver. So, number 19. Which molecule serves as the primary energy currency of the cell? A. NADH, B. FADH2, C. ATP, and D. Glucose. So, cells require a constant supply of usable energy. Yes. While glucose and fats store energy, they cannot always be used immediately. Yes. ATP serves as the universal energy currency of the cell. Yes. ATP. When ATP is broken down, energy is released for cellular process. Yes. ATP, when broke, convert to ADP plus 1-phosphate. When muscle contraction, active transport, and protein synthesis all depend on ATP. Yes. Therefore, ATP is the primary energy of currency of the cell. So, number 20. A patient present with tachycardia, weight loss, heat intolerance, and elevated T3 or T4 levels. Which physiological change would most likely be observed? Yes. A. Reduce metabolic rate. B. Increase oxygen consumption. B. Bradycardia. And D. Decrease ATP utilization. So, let's identify the clinical picture first. Yes. Tachycardia. 1. Weight loss. 2. heart intolerance 3, and elevated thyroid hormones strongly suggest hyperthyroidism. Yes. Thyroid hormones increase the metabolic activity of nearly every tissue in the body. Yes. As the metabolism increases, cells consume more oxygen and generate more ATP. Yes. These also explain the increased heat production seen in this patient. Yes. Therefore, increased oxygen consumption is most likely physiological change. Yes. Number B. 21. Which blood vessel carries oxygenated blood from the lungs to the heart? A. Pulmonary artery. B. Superior vena cava. B. Pulmonary vein. And D. Coronary sinus. So, this question tests in very common cardiovascular concepts. Yes. Many students anatomically associate arteries with oxygenated blood and veins with deoxygenated blood. Yes. However, the pulmonary circulation is an important exception. Yes. Blood becomes oxygenated in the lungs. It then returns to the heart through the pulmonary veins. Yes. Especially these veins empty into the left atrium. Yes. Therefore, the correct answer is the pulmonary vein. Number C. So, number 22. Which electrolyte is most important in generating the resting membrane potential? A. Calcium. B. Sodium. B. C. Potassium. And D. Magnesium. To understand this question, we need to think about the resting state of a neuron. Potassium concentration is much higher inside the cell than outside. Yes, everybody knows. Everybody knows is the name of a movie from the Asker Faraday. Yes. Did you watch this? It's a drama movie. It's beautiful. Watch. So, even when the neuron is resting, potassium leak channels remain open. Yes. Potassium continuously diffuses out of the cells. Yes. This movement creates a negative electrical potential inside the neuron. Yes. Inside and outside. When potassium goes down, the inside more negative. Yes. As a result, potassium plays the dominant role in establishing the resting membrane potential. Yes. Therefore, potassium is the correct answer, C. Number 23. The sinoarterial SA node is located in which chamber of the heart? A. Left atrium. B. Right atrium. C. Left ventricle. And D. Right ventricle. So, the SA node is often called the natural pacemaker of the heart. Yes. Natural pacemaker of the heart. It generates electrical impulse automatically. Yes. These impulses spread through the atria and initiate each heartbeat. Yes. Anatomically, the SA node is located in the wall of the right atrium near the superior vena cava because it sets the rhythm for the entire heart. It's considered the primary pacemaker. Therefore, the SA node is found in the right atrium, and option B is correct answer. 25. Which type of immunity results from the vaccination? A. Passive natural immunity. B. Passive artificial immunity. C. Active natural immunity. And D. Active artificial immunity. So, vaccines expose the immune system to an antigen without causing the full diseases, yes? The body responds by producing antibody and memory cells, plasma cells. When see the vaccine for first time, produce two cells, antibodies and memory cells. So, because the immune system actively generates the response itself, this is considered active immunity. Since the exposure is provided through medical intervention rather than natural infection, it is classified as artificial, yes? Therefore, vaccination produced active artificial immunity. The D is correct answer, yes? So, which hormone is secreted by the posterior pituitary gland? Yes? A. Growth factor. B. ACTH. C. Oxytocin. And D. TSH. Posterior pituitary makes two hormones. One, ADH, and two, oxytocin. So, oxytocin is correct answer. So, 26. Which molecule is the final electron acceptor in the electron transport chain? Yes? Electron transport chain. So, the electron transport chain is the final stage of aerobic respiration. Yes? Electrons pass through a series of protein complexes located in the inner mitochondrial membrane. At the end of the chain, those electrons must be accepted by another molecule. Yes, oxygen serves as the terminal electron acceptor. Yes, therefore, oxygen is the final electron acceptor. Option B. 27. Which part of the nephron is primarily responsible for filtration? Loop of Henle. B. Distal convoluted tubule. C. Collecting duct. And D. Glomerulus. So, the glomerulus is primarily responsible for filtration. Yes, blood pressure, and filtration begins. 28. What type of epithelium lines most of the alveoli in the lungs? Simple squamous epithelium. Yes. C. 29. Which enzyme unwinds DNA during replication? Yes. DNA replication. The enzymes is helicase unwinds DNA, primase RNA primer, DNA polymerase builds DNA, and ligase seals fragments. Yes. So the correct answer is helicase. You can memorize these 3 diameter. Yes, I wrote for you. It's gold. Yes, guys, you can write on the notebook these trees. Yes, and memorize for last night of the exam. Yes. A patient, number 30. A patient with severe vomiting, yes, is most likely to develop which acid-base disturbance. Yes. Severe vomiting leads to loss of gastric HCl, and it leads to hydrogen ions lost, and blood becomes more alkaline. Yes, and as a result is metabolic alkalosis. Yes, metabolic alkalosis, number D. Have a good time, guys. Hopefully you enjoy that from this video.